Exactly. That's
And
it.
so instead of starting from scratch, they're starting with, I don't know, maybe 50 quid in the bank or whatever that, at least covers the cost of the hall and goes towards the printing. And then hopefully in the next event, maybe they'll make another, little bit of money and it'll build up. And this is how, some groups have really got going. I mean, the group in St. Anne's, the New Horizons group, this group does a tremendous job. They hold meetings pretty much every Monday through the year, with the exception of August. And, they hold film nights, and they're able to bring speakers, in from all over the country, and they're able to hold their prices at £3 for an entrance.
Yeah.
But, they recognise that some they'll make money on, some they won't.
Yep.
But across the year, they're in good shape. Now, normally I recommend to somebody who's putting on a talk that they charge £5. Now, yes, there's a lot of observation that we should be doing what we do for free, but this is just, we live in a material world. We all have expenses. We have to find a way to cover those expenses. And the other factor is that we also have to recognise that tragically in Western society, there is a thing called perceived value.
Yeah.
In the indigenous cultures, a gift has the greatest value. A gift is something that you absolutely treasure and revere. In our Western consumerist culture, a gift is something we toss over our shoulder because it has no value to us, because we didn't have to work to get it. That's why I've always maintained that giving away DVDs is a waste of time, effort, and money.
True.
At the very least, if people want to, spread the word, you charge £2 or £3 or whatever, if you just want to cover your costs, but charge £2 or £3. Because if somebody parts with £2 or £3, you increase the likelihood of them watching that VD thousands of %.
Exactly, that's true. I completely...
And I am a living example of this. I have a box full of DVDs here that people have sort of sent me through the post saying, Ian, you should watch this. I think I might have watched one or two.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've got a whole shelf load of DVDs which I paid for. And guess which ones I've watched?
It's obvious, isn't it?
So, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I understand the argument, and I get it with the alternative view events as well.
Yeah.
But, why is it that there aren't very many events of this caliber put on? And the reason being is because people will put on one and they'll find that they actually lose their shirt on it.
Yeah, they do.
Exactly. Yeah.
But my accountant, every time I mention running another alternative view event, he has apoplexy because I call it an investment, he calls it a loss. And the alternative view events are, in my opinion, are an investment because they're an investment in what we're deliberately trying to do with the alternative view is one of our goals is to have 40% new people at every event.
Right.
We're not trying to create a club or a fraternity. We don't want the same old faces. It's great to see, friendly, familiar faces, but it's more important for us to attract new people because that's the indication that we are, reaching out and spreading the word to, a wider audience.
That's it.
And each of these events, David Bellamy, Johnny Ball, Cynthia McKinney, Leonard Horowitz, William Engdahl, Daniel Esterlin, fantastic, high-quality speakers.
Absolutely.
But guess what? They've got expenses.
Yeah, exactly.
And they've got livelihoods to make. And, Greg Nicoletos came over. An amazing presentation on the microchipping agenda.
Yeah.
He flew in from Brisbane. And,
transhumanism.
Transhumanism. It is for me, it's the definitive presentation on transhumanism and the microchipping agenda. He has a great website which goes by the snappy name of wethepeoplewillnotbechips.com.
Okay.
But Greg is a nutritionist in Australia. He gave up a week ostensibly to fly from Brisbane, to come to the UK to give a presentation, and then literally the day after, he got back on the plane and flew back. So he was travelling for 4 days, basically.
Yeah.
To give a presentation in Bristol. And in my opinion, it was an incredibly important presentation. And he has more knowledge on the subject than anybody I can think of in the UK. So it was well worthwhile. But, we had to pay for that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I mean, what we have to do is recognise that, look, at the end of the day, we're trying to get the information out there. We're also trying to at least subsist. You're not likely to see any of us driving around in new vehicles. I think my van, I've had for quite a few years now. It's 19 years old, and basically I plan to keep it for as long as I possibly can.
Yeah, that's the best way.
So yeah, this is not a field which anyone comes into to make money.
Make money. You can't. Yeah.
You can. You can. Period.
How do people expect that in a situation where you have multi-billion-pound marketing, budgets and production costs, where they'd have 2-week meetings just to discuss the text that they're going to use in an advert, money to burn, and then how do they expect that when people are trying to put together information and talks that they can come up against it when they're hardly have the shirt on their back? Of course they're going to have to charge for it, and I always. I don't know where people. I understand where they're coming from when they say it, but they have to be real about it. It's like.
Well, yeah, I've got the DVD. My latest DVD is being released on Friday. It's BP, Population Control, and the End of an Age. And I mean, I gave that presentation. We recorded that presentation on July the 23rd. Now, I would estimate that I had probably put in 200 hours plus of research to be able to put that presentation together.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's good you should bring that up, because we were talking about this earlier briefly, and I remember reading, this is probably about 2 weeks after the first incident happened. Now, unlike the majority of people, I literally didn't start looking into the information at all. I just left it. I thought, no, I don't want to get involved in this. Everyone's running around and everyone's getting themselves in a bit of a twist, talking about, the end of the whole of the Gulf Coast, or is it gonna just rapidly inflate the food prices around the world, and could it be an extinction level event? And I thought, well, I don't feel like this is what it is. It feels too much like a deliberate. It was too fearful. So I thought, I'm just going to let it go for a while. And then I read an article saying that it was false flag, and there's a few bits of information here and there. And I thought, are they trying to big this up to make it sound worse than it actually is? And that was my opinion up until recently. Now I know, Ian, you have probably got a different view to me at the minute, because I actually think that it was been overhyped and it won't be as bad. But obviously you've done a lot more research into this than I have. So can you just give us a bit of background on the whole false flag scenario and what you think is going to happen with it?
Okay, well, there's a couple of things that I think we should mention. First of all, I was stranded in Lisbon on April the 19th of this year. I was on my way back from Mozambique, where I'd been visiting my daughter, who works as a dive instructor down there. And, of course, I was stuck in Lisbon because of this volcanic ash cloud that had swept across, allegedly, Europe. Clearest blue skies ever, but, no planes were flying. And, of course, we now know that was totally overhyped. I mean, the same guy took the decision to shut the skies down as shut the rail network down after the Hartford crash. So talk about hedging your bets and playing it over safe. But anyway, so I was one of tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of people all around the planet who couldn't get to their desired destination at that particular time.
Yeah.
Now, I was very sensitive because I'm very aware. I was in the US in the 90s when both Waco and the Oklahoma City bombing occurred. And Waco, the attack on Waco, was April the 19th, 1993. The Oklahoma City bombing was April the 19th, 1995.
Yeah.
April the 19th is the first day of Beltane.
That's the one.
It's the 12-day festival, and the 19th/20th is the festival of sacrifice by fire.
Yeah, I remember this, yeah.
Now, preferably children, generally, in the occult belief system. And of course, Waco, there was something like 22 children, I think, killed. And in the Oklahoma City bombing, I think it was something like 70 odd, because the building collapsed on top of a nursery.
Oh, no. What?
Now, I was sitting there in the hotel in Lisbon, and I crafted a newsletter together. It was midday, April the 19th, and I had this strong sense of foreboding that something was about to happen.
Yeah.
And I wrote a newsletter. I mean, you can read the newsletter. It's up on my my website. It was called Volcanic Truth. And I was asking the question about, you know, whether the whole volcano incident, instead of a sacrifice by fire, involving death, maybe they were just trying to create sort of anger and frustration and feed off that energy of, you know, hundreds of thousands of people stranded, some of whom, you know, in very difficult financial positions, you know, around the planet. But I made the observation. I said, stay vigilant. You know, the April the 19th isn't over yet, particularly in the Western Hemisphere. And then, of course, the following day, the rig blew.
Yeah.
Now, initially, you know, from my oil industry background, I wanted to believe that this was an unfortunate accident. And I even gave a presentation in the States at a conference in California in mid-May. So this would be about 3 weeks after the event occurred in the Gulf. And even at the Deep Geopolitics event, I still resisted the making a statement that it was a deliberate event.
Absolutely.
Because there was too much that I wasn't clear about. But anyway, as time has gone on, I am of the opinion now that it was indeed a contrived incident. And in fact, on the DVD, I have actually named the individual who was on board the rig, who in my opinion has some very, very important questions that need to be answered. Now, unbeknown to me, on the same day that I was recording this presentation in which I named this individual, somebody else was also naming the same individual. But whereas I was naming the guy at the Glastonbury Symposium and recording my presentation in front of 300 people, this other guy was making the observation on Bloomberg television. And this is a guy called Matthew Simmons.
Right.
Now, Matthew Simmons is a guy that I've known about for a long time. In fact, I wrote an article where I discussed Matthew Simmons' role in the hiking of the oil price when it was on its climb to $147 a barrel a few years ago. And I talked about Matthew Simmons. But so for much of the last sort of decade, I haven't agreed with very much that Matthew Simmons has said. But over the last few weeks, I have found myself agreeing with the guy because he was becoming extremely critical of BP and of the federal government, and also starting to raise awareness of the magnitude of the ecological disaster, which we'll get onto in a second. Now, Matthew Simmons was high profile. He was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations as well.
Right.
And on the same day that he named this individual, in fact, he actually named him, and he also referred to him as a 32-year-old punk. But he also made some other very pointed observations, stating that part of this was about deliberately collapsing BP, taking BP's stock down to penny stock, and making it an easy target for companies like Exxon.
Yeah.
Well, on Sunday week ago, Matthew Simmons was found drowned in his hot tub.
Wild.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the following day,